I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
This time, we're faced with something that really has no precedent. That doesn't mean that there's nothing we can say about it, because it contains elements of previous economic difficulties, and also, in many ways, it's a very comprehensible, if I can say that. Despite the fact that nobody saw this coming, the underlying logic of what's going on is not very hard to make sense of, but it is something really different, and that has actually been a problem, because I think the policy response in the United States and elsewhere, but certainly in the United States, has been hindered by the fact that a lot of people in positions either to make policy or to influence policy are fighting the last war, that they're thinking in terms of previous crises. And this one is different in some important respects, although also, as always, there's a lot of continuity. So some things some lessons that we should have learned from the last crisis remain very relevant today. So let's talk about what happened. So obviously, we have a virus that is very dangerous. It's fairly high mortality rate, and also we're now learning, even if doesn't kill you, the possibility of long-term health damage is very real. A lot of long-timers who are infected don't die, but continue to suffer health problems months afterwards, and growing evidence of long-term cardiac and other damage. So this is a virus to take very seriously. Not something, if you have been some countries that try to pursue a strategy of herd immunity, basically let the virus spread, and then eventually enough people have developed antibodies that stop spreading. Well, that's, in fact, even countries that said they were going to do that have ended up finding that the cost was too high. So someplace like Sweden talked a lot about herd immunity, but in practice now, Sweden has quite a few restrictions in place, not that different from other countries that follow different strategies. So we have this unique economic shock. It's really nothing like the kinds of things that we have. And among other things, the nature of the economic shock blurs the line between the two kinds of economic shocks that we're used to thinking about. So we normally, in the textbooks, every textbook, my textbook, we talk about demand shocks versus supply shocks. A demand shock is when something causes people to cut their spending, something like the collapse of the housing bubble and the disruption of financial markets in 2008. A supply shock is when something reduces the supply of goods and services, and it's inflationary. So something like the oil shock of 1979. What we got this time was both and neither. It was, on the one hand, it was what happened was that, given the threat of the virus, eventually everyone realized that it was necessary to curtail a lot of economic activities that were at high risk of spreading the virus. So basically, quarantine of some kind has been the necessary universal response, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. Quarantine, which is the response to the virus, is both a demand and a supply shock, or neither a demand nor a supply shock, either way you want to put it. What happens is that you rule out a lot of the things that you normally do in the economy. So you rule out indoor dining in restaurants, you rule out sitting in bars, you rule out live entertainment events.